Before we begin this episode, it's not an argument that technology is evil and that governments are secretly controlling every aspect of life, or that the modern society is objectively worse than previous generations. This is an historical and cultural deep dive into how convenience, security, innovation, and human behavior have changed over time, and how those changes may have quietly reshaped expectations around privacy and freedom. Tonight, the question is not whether freedom disappeared, the question is whether freedom slowly changed form while most of us focused on making life easier, faster, and more connected. For most of human history, freedom looked different than it does today. The earlier generations, they often thought about the freedom in physical terms: movement, property, speech, and religion, our local communities, and the ability to live without direct interference from the authorities. Modern life introduced a new dimension where people increasingly experience the freedom through access, speed, convenience, connection, and technology. Now, when the people think about control, they usually imagine something dramatic and obvious. They imagine uniform checkpoints, restrictions, loud speeches, and authority visibly exercising the power over people's lives. History trained us to recognize those forms of power because for centuries that is often how the governments and the institutions expanded their influence during times of uncertainty. Throughout history, moments of instability frequently created the public support for extraordinary actions. Whether it's during wars, economic emergencies, public health crises, and periods of national fear, many governments expanded the temporary powers with the stated goal of restoring order and stability. Most citizens did not support those actions because they disliked liberty. They supported them because uncertainty often felt more dangerous than accepting temporary limitations. Our history also shows us something important and deeply human. People adopt in new systems much faster than they usually realize because of the routines that become normal surprisingly quickly. Entire generations grow up believing their version of everyday life has always existed because they never experienced the systems that came before. Now let's think about it. Modern security expectations, identification requirements, digital records, online accounts, security checks, verification systems, and automated services became the ordinary parts of our daily life over time rather than all at once. That does not automatically mean that society became less free, but it does show how convenience and security can gratefully become expected features of modern living. Now, for most of history, control depended heavily on the force and the visibility. Today, something different emerged because the influence is increasingly works through the participation and incentives and the design rather than direct command. The biggest shifts of the modern era may not be that power became stronger. It may be that systems became easier and more attractive to voluntarily join. Now, think about this. The device most people carry from morning until night, our smartphones, they become one of the fastest adapted technologies in history because they solved real problems and dramatically reduced the friction in everyday life. Our communication became immediate, information became portable, and navigation became automatic, and entire industry reorganized around the digital access. Modern phones combine what earlier generations would have considered impossible. They function as maps, cameras, calendars, banks, entertainment platforms, social spaces, shopping tools, identification systems, and gateways into modern life. Most of the people adopted them not because anyone demanded it, but because the convenience has always been one of the strongest motivations in human behavior. But every convenience creates information. Every location request, every recommendation, and every digital purchase, every search and every app permission, and every online interaction also creates data that helps systems become more efficient and more personalized. The data itself is not automatically dangerous because many of the services people enjoy depend on those systems functioning well. The streaming platforms recommended content based on viewing habits. Navigation apps reduce traffic through shared location data. Digital marketplaces simplify the decisions by learning patterns and preferences over time. The benefits are real, but convenience changes the behavior in subtle ways. Years ago, people memorized directions, remembered phone numbers, carried physical maps, and relied more heavily on local knowledge because the alternatives did not exist. Today, external systems that increasingly handle those responsibilities because efficiency became more valuable than memorization. The shifts create a very important question. At what point does convenience become dependence? And what point does the dependence become expectations rather than choice? The difficult part is that dependence rarely feels negative while life continues improving. Try imagining participating in modern society without digital accounts, smartphones, online payments, navigation tools, cloud storage, or emails. It is possible, but increasingly the systems assume the participation is often reward participation with speed and access. That distinction matters because the expectations can influence the behavior when nobody forces compliance. Then another transformation arrived that may even be more powerful than the data collection itself. Algorithms became invisible editors of attention by helping determine what people are discovering, what receives the visibility, and what captures the time. Most systems do not decide beliefs, but they often shape which information people encounter first. The personalization created extraordinary benefits. People discovered education communities, creative opportunities, business friendships, and global conversations that previous generations have never had access to at this scale. At the same time, personalized experiences introduce questions about what happens when two people live in the same country but experience completely different digital realities. Our technology companies often optimize for engagement because the engagement supports services and business models. That does not automatically mean that manipulation because optimization exists across almost every industry in different forms. But incentives matter because the systems built to maximize attention may naturally reward emotionally intense content more often than slow and thoughtful discussion. Humans have always been influenced by the environments. Cities shape movement. Architecture shapes interactions, and stories shape purchasing decisions, and media shapes awareness. Digital environments do something similar, except they operate continuously and they adapt in real time. Privacy changed alongside these developments as well. For most of the history, privacy existed naturally because the collection, storing, and organizing information was difficult and expensive. Today, privacy increasingly depends on the active choices and awareness setting and habits. Most people do not read every policy before clicking accept. That does not mean people are careless. It usually means life moves faster than anyone can reasonably evaluate in every agreement they encounter. Modern consent often arrives in the language of convincing rather than obligation. Nobody usually says or give us your information. Instead, the language sounds familiar. Personalize your experience, improve recommendations, save your preferences, and stay connected. Enable location services, continue. Those decisions feel small individually, even though small decisions repeated over years can reshape habits and expectations. Eventually, the people sometimes pause and ask a simple question: how much of modern life exists inside systems that I never intentionally chose, but greatly accepted because they became normal? That question is not fear, it is awareness. So, are people more free today or less free today? Modern life created opportunities, access, creativity, communications, and independence that earlier generations could barely imagine. At the same time, the modern life created new dependencies and new pressures and new questions about autonomy and attention. Maybe freedom did not disappear at all. Maybe freedom evolved from resisting physical control into understanding the digital influence and making intentional decisions. Maybe the challenge of modern citizenship is not rejecting technology, but learning how to use it without becoming passive inside it. History has suggests that societies rarely transform overnight. The change usually arrives through habits, incentives, and convenience and gradual normalization until eventually the people realize the definition of normal change beneath them. The question is not whether change happened, the question is whether people remained aware while it happened. Technology itself is not the enemy, and progress itself is not the enemy. The deeper question is whether people continue acting as conscious participants in the system surrounding them every day. Because the future may not arrive demanding obedience, it may arrive offering comfort. Now, as we close this episode, maybe the biggest takeaway is not that freedom vanished, that technology failed us, or modern life became something to fear. History shows that societies consistently evolve, and every generation makes trade-offs between security, convenience, opportunity, privacy, and progress based on the world they inherit. The important question is not whether change exists, it's whether we remain aware enough to understand the choices we are making and intentional enough to decide which values deserve to stay at the center of our lives. Moving forward, this is not a call to reject technology or disconnect from the world or become suspicious of every system around us. It is an invitation to stay engaged and ask better questions. Remain curious, protect your ability to think independently, and remember that awareness itself is a form of freedom. The future is not written yet, and societies are shaped by the ordinary people making thoughtful decisions every day. So stay informed and stay present. Stay connected to what matters, and never underestimate the power of conscious choices made one day at a time. If this episode challenged your perspective, then it accomplished its purpose. Drop your thoughts below and tell me whether convenience expanded freedom or quietly redefined it. This has been the Unfiltered Political Lens. Like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, question comfortably, think critically, and stay aware of what becomes normal. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.